What's up, YouTube? You know what time it is. It's my fan time as I adjust the video cam here. The built-in webcam to the laptop here. But anyhow, um, this is actually a reply to a challenge vid, and it was posted about a week or so back. And sorry I couldn't get to it sooner, but Jake's 199456 posted a challenge, and basically it was, how did you get into the teams that you're a fan of? And I thought that was an interesting challenge because we all talk about collecting jerseys, and obviously myself included, a lot of us have a lot of jerseys that we're not particularly a fan of the team of, but we just want the jersey. So my collection basically spans just about every team in the pro sports, but my most the fans the teams, rather, I should say, that I'm a quite a big fan of, diehard fan. Well, obviously, mostly is the Philadelphia teams. Any of you who watched my series I did this past NFL season, the Season of the Fan series about the Philadelphia Eagles, that's that is a team out of the four Philadelphia teams that I'm the biggest fan of, with all due respect to the other three, obviously. But the Eagles were the first for me. The Eagles was what kind of got me, welcomed me into being a Philadelphia sports fan those many years ago, about 20 years ago or so now, back in the early 90s. And of course, the Phillies came along, the Flyers and Sixers, but it was the Eagles that really was first. And why did I become an Eagle fan? Well, way back when. I've told this story before, but I'll say it again for the sake of this challenge. Many, many years ago, the Eagles played a playoff game in New Orleans in the Superdome against the Saints. And it was the final year Reggie White was an Eagle, so I guess this was back in '92, if I remember correct. Well, we're going back. And the Eagles won that game, and I was sitting there, I was at my dad's, and we were watching the game, and my dad was doing the typical kind of, at the halftime there with the matchsticks, saying, well, this is why they line up in certain ways. He was giving me a 5-minute, introduction into football kind of spiel there on a table with some matchsticks. And I always remember that game. I always remember, the Eagles had a long touchdown from Randall Cunningham to Fred Barnett. Fred Barnett became my first favorite Eagle wide receiver. Arkansas Fred became my first favorite Eagle. It was the first Eagle jersey I ever owned. Still own it. Starter replica, Kelly Green jersey. And actually, my middle name is Barnett, so it all kind of worked out. So the Eagles were the first Philadelphia team that I just fell in love with, and I haven't missed an Eagles game. I watch every game on TV. If I'm not fortunate enough to be at an Eagles game, I haven't missed an Eagles game, and I don't know how long. I mean, the other sports, there's so many games, and actually sit down and watch every single one of them is kind of tricky. But with football, obviously, there's only 16, unless you make the playoffs. To watch. So it's a little easier just to kind of sit down and watch it all. And I haven't missed an Eagles game in a number of years. Good years, bad years for the team. I watch them all. And as some of you may have noticed from that series, I get pretty into it. I'm your typical vocal Philadelphia fan. So, I will get animated during games, good and bad. And that's how I became, that's how I became an Eagles fan. I mean, the other Philadelphia teams, the Phillies, the Flyers, the Sixers. I think the best story, well, there's two really good stories. The Phillies, baseball was kind of what I got into a little later. I used to go to Phillies games when I was young. And they always either played the Astros or the Expos, and I always thought they were playing the same team because the names were so similar. But, this is way back when they used to play at the Vet, back in the 80s and 90s. And So my love of baseball kind of came a little later in life. Hockey, I certainly remember the '97 finals when the Flyers played the Red Wings, and I was my first favorite Flyer was well, two of them really. It's tied for two. Is Eric Lindros and John LeClair, and two of the three members of the old Legion of Doom line with Michael Renberg. And the first Flyer jersey I ever owned was a starter replica John LeClair. At the time it was the home white. Now it would be considered the away white. But I got that during that Cup run in '97. Of course, they got swept by the Red Wings in the finals that year. But realistically, I got really more into hockey thanks to my friend who since passed away, but Paul. And Paul was a big fan of big sports fan like me, and he loved he loved hockey. He loved the Flyers. He took me to my first ever Flyers game, which was a playoff game. Shout out to Hometown Fizz because they beat his Maple Leafs in that game. Maple Leafs went on to win the series, but the Flyers won the game that I went to, and I fell in love with it. You know, the one thing I'll say about hockey is really more so than any sport, you don't have an appreciation for it unless you actually go to watch a game. Because the sights, the sounds, you can see plays developing. It's an awesome game to go see live. And so I get to a few Flyers games a year, including at least one a year with my good friend Mark M., who's a diehard Flyer fan. And so really Paul kind of taught me a little more about hockey, and we went to some games over the years. We went to playoff block parties they used to have out in front of the Wells Fargo Center, where the Flyers play their home games, and it's just a great environment, and I just fell in love with it. And I always said if I were to ever if I were ever to purchase season tickets or partial season plan tickets, it would be the Flyers. Yes, even over my beloved Eagles, because I'm not a great weather person. I don't enjoy sitting out in the heat in baseball games or when it's really cold or rainy or snowy outdoors for football games. I love it. I love the sports, but I don't do very good in weather. I never have. But because it's such a great spectacle to me to watch in person, I would, someday maybe consider getting, if not season tickets, maybe partial season tickets to the Flyers, and maybe attend, 5 games a year or something like that, whatever it is, 5-10 games a year, do a plan like that. I would do it. I would definitely do it. And so, yeah, I definitely have an appreciation for hockey and the Flyers. That's my team. That's, I have an interest in many teams. Outside of the Philly teams. I get called on that quite a lot at work, but I have what I call the circle teams. So if the Philly teams is a playoff situation, Philly's not in there. There's some other teams, I would never root for them like I would the Philly teams, but there's certain teams I have an appreciation for that I will watch. The Seahawks being one. The Steelers, for football, and there's some for basketball and hockey and baseball, but my first love is the Philly teams. That's always the way it's going to be. However, off subject, but so yeah, the Flyers are my team. That's really how I got into them. My good friend Mark M., he's a diehard fan. I mean, he's like me with the Eagles with the Flyers. So he has a great appreciation for it. Like I said, we go to at least one game together a year. It's always a great time. And he's on some streak. The Flyer, he's been to quite a few Flyer games over the years, and I don't know what the number is exactly, but he's seen them win. How many games in a row, including this past Saturday when they beat the Nashville Predators in a shootout. Mark was at that game, and I said, and the Flyers always struggle in the shootout. And I said, Mark, I mean, my goodness, you're the magic man at Flyer games because if they win a shootout, you got something going. Well for you, and so good 2 wins for the Flyers over the weekend over the Predators and Capitals. They got 4 points over the weekend, so that's good. They're catching up to those Bruins, Murph. Anyhow, but yeah, the Flyers for hockey, for baseball, the Phillies. But I will admit to this. And I get a lot of heat for this, but my American League team is the New York Yankees. And the reason the New York Yankees is my American League team, the Phillies for obvious reasons in the National League, but the Yankees is because when I was young, I used to collect sports cards. And I always remember, I forget who made them, but there were these stickers in these packs of baseball cards. And it was like a hologram sticker. It's like you can turn it, looks like the thing's moving around. It was the logo of that team. And I used to have a few of them up on the wall. And one of them was the Yankee one, and I always liked the logo. You know, when you're young, you get into things. You don't know how, but you get... So the Yankee logo. So I adopted them as my American League team. And they've been my American League team ever since. My first favorite Yankee was Don Mattingly. And the reason for that is because I always liked his baseball cards. So so it was Don Mattingly, and of course, not soon after was Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter is my all-time favorite Yankee. And, I watched him throughout his career. I've been to 2 Yankee games in person, one at the old Yankee Stadium, one at the new Yankee Stadium. They lost both of them, but it was an experience to see the stadiums. And the fact that New York is about a 2-hour car ride from here, it's not that hard to, at a young age, to pick, a team that's close by just to be, another team you root for. For basketball, and I will also say this, being that Mike Trout is on the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, I've adopted the Angels as a team too because I'm a big fan of Mike Trout. He's a local guy done good. He's a big Philadelphia fan still. He's 4 for 4, even though he plays on the Angels, and I'm a big fan of him. He's one of my favorite players who's not a Philly in baseball right now. So I do like the Angels, mainly because of Mike Trout. But anyhow, for basketball, I mean, obviously I'm a Sixer fan. That's my team, even though they're pretty bad right now. It seems like anytime they get a guy that has any kind of talent anymore, they just want to trade him. But it is, together we build. Get all those second-round picks. I hope it works out, but it's a real head-scratcher with what the heck they're doing of late. But anyhow, the Sixers, when I was young, they were horrible. They were like they are now. They were just bad. It was just after Barkley left, was traded to the Suns. And though Barkley was the first Sixer I really remember, what really brought me back fully with the Sixers was Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson's always going to be my favorite Sixer. He was the guy I followed throughout his career here in Philly. He was, I wore number 3 in high school when I was on the basketball team for Allen Iverson. I was at the game when he crossed over Michael Jordan when he was a rookie, and that's the reason I became a big Allen Iverson fan, and that's the reason it kind of brought me back to the Sixers. I don't watch a lot of college hoops. I just don't. There's so many games. It's just so hard to follow. I love all the home teams, but so I always watch the March Madness, the tournaments and all, fill out the brackets every year. But I'm not a big college basketball watcher. So I knew who Allen Iverson was, but I just didn't follow him too much when he was at Georgetown. Though I do remember some of the Big East tournaments from back in the day and the March Madness tournaments and all. So my kind of, introduction to Allen Iverson was when he was a rookie with the Sixers, and when he did that move on Jordan, that kind of, cemented him as my all-time. This guy's got some chop to do that. I'm gonna follow this guy, and he became my all-time favorite Sixer, and I've had great memories with him over the years. As I know quite a few of the other members of the group do too. I have a lot of Allen Iverson fans in the group. But realistically, if I have to be honest about it, my first... I always liked the Sixers, obviously, the home team. And you can see the leg in the back there. But if I have to be truly truthful, and yes, that is kind of, I guess, weird to say that, but truly truthful about things, the first professional basketball team that I ever just got attached to was the Chicago Bulls. because my first ever favorite athlete was Michael Jordan, and Scottie Pippen came around that same time too. And the Bulls were one of my first loves in sports. Those Chicago Bulls teams with Jordan and Pippen and Horace Grant, the early Bulls teams and then the later Bulls teams. I was such a huge fan. I went to a game every year. My dad would get what was called the Superstar Pack for the Sixers. That's how I was at that game when Iverson crossed Jordan. And you get 5 games a year, and it was whoever the big time teams were at the time that the Sixers were playing. Which wasn't the Sixers, but it was it was the Bulls, it was the Hornets, it was the Knicks, it was the Magic when Shaq was there and Penny. It was those teams. So I saw a lot of those teams play in the '90s against the Sixers at the Spectrum and then later at the what is now the Wells Fargo Center. And the Bulls was part of that pack every year. So that's why my dad got it, so I can go, see the Bulls play live at least once a year when they came to Philly. And I just love that team. I wish I can find the middle school yearbook that I have somewhere, and there's a picture of me, and I know A-Rock would appreciate this, picture of me like coming out of one of the buildings, and I got my starter Bulls jacket on, and I got my starter Bulls hat on, and I got my Scottie Pippen replica champion jersey on. So I did the trifecta even back then, matching up everything, and but yeah, that was like that was my one of my first real loves. So the Chicago Bulls. And they also kind of introduced me to sports. Conversely, back then. So the Bulls is one of the teams that, even to this day, that I do cheer for, and I do have a affinity for, because they gave me some great years when I was young, and I used to have so many verbal arguments with Knick fans back in middle school, high school. Yeah, we used to, yeah. But I always had the smile on my face at the end. Yeah, the Bulls, and of course the Sixers. The Sixers are definitely, obviously a love of mine living here. I hope to God they get better someday, because it's been a lot of it's been a lot of tough watching them of late. But hopefully they get better. So those are my main interests for teams. There's a list, actually. I call them how what was that movie? What was it? Meet the Parents. Ben Stiller and Robert De Niro. The inner circle, right? The inner circle of trust. So I have what I call the inner circle for teams and for certain players that aren't part of that don't actually play here in Philly. And so there are, it's like Russell Wilson Seahawks, right? It's like, the Bulls from back in the day and today. It's, the Yankees. It's the Steelers. There's like a main core of teams. Now, I would never, obviously root as hard for them as I would a Philadelphia team. I would be happy if some of them win, but I'm not going to, fly to Chicago if the Bulls win or go to Seattle if it's not going to happen. But my only championship experience was when the Phillies won in '08. I was at the parade. I have great memories of it. But I do have an affinity to certain teams and certain players. And if any of this makes any sense, I have what I call the inner circle. And of players and teams outside of Philadelphia that I do have a rooting interest for. Such as I was rooting for the Seahawks this year in the Super Bowl. Not anywhere near as hard as if my Eagles were there, but the last 2 years I was rooting for Seattle. When they got there, they won the one, they lost the other, but, so yeah. So that is my reply and believe me, this was as short as I can give the reply. I know I kind of rambled on, but I tend to do that. But, it was a great challenge by you, and, I know you're a big-time Minnesota fan, with the teams there. I know there's been some hard luck on those teams, too. It's one of the things that we share in common is, particularly with football, with the Vikings, with the Eagles, have yet to win a Super Bowl. But the Eagles do have 3 NFL titles that people like to gloss over. Like, oh yeah, that didn't count. Well, how the hell did that not count? But anyhow, as it is, nothing would mean more to me than if the Eagles were to win a Super Bowl. That would be the ultimate to me. With all due respect to the Phillies for '08, thank God for them, because that's the only one I've seen. I'll be 37 in August. That's the only damn title I've seen as a Philadelphia sports fan is the '08 Phillies. But I'm happy for that. I still have the confetti from the parade in a plastic bag. But if the Eagles were to win a Super Bowl, oh my God. You talk about parades, you talk about, fan bases, in the parades and how crazy it would be and how amazing it would be. I can't even imagine if the Eagles were winning this, what it would be like in the city at that parade. And I'll be there. I will definitely be there for that. But it was crazy in '08 when the Phillies won, but I can't even imagine what it would be like if the Eagles win this. So, oh my goodness. Talk about generations of just wanting it so badly, and so that's the hope someday. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the video. Reply to the challenge. I hope other people reply to it too. It's always fun to have these challenges and to get more stories and information from the rest of the groups. But anyhow, that's gonna do it for now. But as always, a big shout out to all my subscribers, fellow Jersey Heads, family, friends, fellow DeviantArt members, anyone I'm forgetting. As always, the groups on Facebook, of course. And as always, this is Mighty Fan saying peace, and I will see you in the next video. I'll be making it actually pretty soon, the wrap-up of pickups for the month of February, so be on the lookout for that. I'll have that out later in the week. But until then, this is Mighty Fan signing off for now. All right, everyone, take care. Bye.